are 3 things you are never supposed to do at Fairview Manor. First, never stay the night. Second, never open the door that leads to the basement. And the third, the most important one, never look at the painting hanging on the living room wall. Because if you look at it long enough, you will realize something terrifying. The eyes in that painting do not belong to the dead. They belong to the person standing right in front of it. My name is Jason Cole, and I broke all 3 rules in less than 1 hour. That night, it was raining. Not a gentle rain, not a pleasant rain. It was heavy, pounding, like the sky was trying to vomit something it had swallowed long ago. I drove my beat-up Ford F-150 along the muddy dirt road of Peregrine Lane. Nothing on both sides but black pine forests, dark, silent, no lights, no houses, just the rain, just me. And that cold feeling clinging to my truck from front to back. On the passenger seat, a brown cardboard box, soaking wet at one corner. Inside, my aunt's diary, the aunt who disappeared 20 years ago. I had promised myself I would never open that diary again, but I broke that promise. That was my first mistake. When my truck turned onto the final dirt path, Fairview Manor appeared before me like a ghost in the white curtain of rain. That 3-story Victorian manor, once the pride of Salem's Hollow, now looked like a giant skeleton crouching low to the ground. The roof shingles were sagging. The paint had peeled off in large patches, leaving black, rotten wood underneath. The windows stared back at me like empty eye sockets. On the front porch, a wooden rocking chair, swaying gently, steadily, even though there was no wind at all. Creak, creak, creak. The sound blended with the rain, like a soundtrack for the fear growing inside my chest. I turned off the engine. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I looked up at the second-floor window, the room at the end of the hallway. A yellowish light flickered on and off, like someone was walking past with a candle. And in that brief moment, when the light flared up, I saw a figure standing behind the glass. Standing completely still, motionless, just standing there, facing me through the fogged-up window. Then the light went out, and the figure vanished. I stepped out of the truck. The rain soaked my shoulders immediately. My hands trembled as I held the cardboard box. It felt heavier than it should have. Not heavy with weight, heavy with something else. Like someone was sitting inside that box, pulling it downward. The 3 wooden steps groaned beneath my feet. Each step a different sound, a whisper, a moan, a giggle, like a child playing hide and seek. I placed my hand on the doorknob, cold, so cold my fingers went numb. I turned it to the left, and the door opened with a long, drawn-out creak, like the sigh of someone waking from a long, long nightmare. Inside was darkness, not ordinary darkness, not the kind you can see through. This was thick darkness, solid, damp, and it had a smell, the smell of rotting wood, the smell of mold, the smell of something that had died long ago but was still here, still waiting. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The cold blue light swept across the large living room, and what I saw made me freeze in place. On the far wall, a large oil painting, a portrait of a family of 3, a man, a woman, and a little girl. But the painting had been torn apart, not randomly, deliberately, violently. Like someone wanted to destroy their faces but deliberately left one thing behind, their eyes. 6 eyes remained on the torn pieces of canvas. The man's eyes, the woman's eyes, the child's eyes, and all of them, were staring at me. I swear to God, they were staring at me. I stepped to the left. They followed. I stepped to the right. They still followed. I turned completely around and walked toward the front door, but I felt their gaze on the back of my neck, hot, damp, like a hand resting on my shoulder. I spun back around. Nothing. The painting was still there. The eyes were still wide open. And now I noticed something I had missed before. Their pupils were not brown, not blue. They were pure black. Black as ink. Black as the bottom of a well. Black as the kind of darkness that no light can ever enter. And they were weeping. Black tears streaming from those painted eyes, rolling down the torn canvas, dripping onto the floor. Drip, drop, drip, drop. Each drop fell like a countdown timer, marking the seconds of my life. Then a whisper, "Jason." Not from upstairs, not from the basement, from the wall in front of me, from behind the plaster, from inside the painting. "Jason, won't you bring Auntie some tea?" I recognized that voice. It was my Aunt Evelyn's voice. Aunt Evelyn had died 20 years ago in a fire in the basement of this house. I had seen her body being carried out on a stretcher, covered with a white sheet. I had cried so hard, my mother had to carry me away. And yet, here she was. Her voice warm and gentle, exactly as she used to call me on those hot summer days when I was 14 years old. I couldn't answer. My throat felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. I looked down at my own hands, shaking like autumn leaves before a storm. I looked down at the cardboard box. The box had come open at some point. I hadn't noticed. The lid lay on the floor, and my aunt's black leather diary was exposed. Its yellowed pages fluttering in the air as if someone was flipping through them from the inside. I wanted to bend down and pick up the lid to close the diary, but as I lowered my head, my eyes fell on the end of the hallway, the basement door. It was open, just a crack, but I swear it had been closed tight when I entered. Now it was open. And from inside that crack of darkness, a draft of cold air escaped. Not the ordinary cold of a damp basement, but a bone-chilling cold. The cold of a place with no life. The cold of death itself. From inside that crack came a sound. Thump, thump, thump. Like bare footsteps on cold earth. But not footsteps going down. Footsteps coming up. From deep below, climbing toward me. I took 2 steps back. My back hit the wall. My hand pressed against the damp wallpaper, and when I pulled my hand away, my palm was coated with a thick, brownish-red liquid, blood. The wall was bleeding. Blood ran down the wallpaper, seeping into every groove, every pattern, slowly forming a shape. A hand, 5 fingers spread wide. Like someone on the other side of the wall was pressing their palm against the plaster, trying to reach through and touch me. I didn't wait to see what would happen. When those fingers finally broke through, I ran. I ran down the long hallway, ignoring the walls bleeding on both sides, ignoring the footsteps from the basement growing closer, ignoring the whispers coming from behind every door I passed. I ran toward the staircase leading to the second floor, because the ground floor was no longer safe. But as I set my foot on the first step, I realized I was wrong. Each step I climbed made a different sound. But it wasn't the creak of old wood. It was voices. The first step whispered my name, Jason. The second step giggled. Jason is home. The third step wept, Jason, please, don't come up. The fourth step was silent. But on its surface, a fresh streak of blood was flowing down from above, crossing right where I was about to place my foot. I stopped. I looked up. At the top of the stairs, where the second floor hallway began, a figure was standing. A little girl, about 8 or 9 years old, wearing a long white dress that reached her ankles. Her hair was black, long, covering her face. She stood completely motionless, bare feet on the wooden floor, making no sound at all. Her arms hung limp at her sides, her small hands covered in something dark, mud, maybe, or dried blood. Do you remember me, Uncle Jason? Her voice did not sound like a child's voice. It was too deep, too hoarse, too old, as if an elderly woman was speaking through a broken speaker, trying to mimic the tone of a little girl. I shook my head. I had never seen this child in my life. I am Aunt Evelyn's daughter, she said. My name is Sarah, and you saw me in the painting. Hi. I froze. The torn painting, the 3 people, the man, the woman, the little girl. That little girl was Sarah. And the black eyes that had been staring at me from the painting, the eyes weeping black tears, those were the eyes of the child standing before me right now. She raised her hand and slowly parted the black hair covering her face. I wanted to close my eyes, but I couldn't. My gaze was pulled toward her face by some invisible force, and when I saw her face, I understood why the painting had been torn apart. Sarah had no eyes. Her eye sockets were empty, hollow, deep, black as 2 bottomless wells, and from inside those hollow sockets, something was moving. White maggots crawled out of her eye sockets, down her cheeks, down her neck, down her white dress that had long since turned yellow with age. The people who stay here don't need eyes, she said, her voice still deep and ancient. Because in this place, the thing that sees everything is not the eyes, it's the house. It sees through walls, through doors, through skin and bone. It sees the fear running through your veins, Uncle Jason. She took 1 step toward me. I took 1 step back, but my heel hit the top step of the staircase, and there was nowhere left to retreat. Mother wants to see you in the basement, she said. She has been waiting for 20 years, and she told me to tell you, if you do not come down on your own, she will pull you down herself. Then she smiled. Not the smile of a child, but the smile of something that had seen too many deaths, something that had become a part of death itself. And when she smiled, I saw inside her mouth. There was no tongue, just an empty black hole, deep and endless, as if her mouth was a well leading straight down into the earth, down to where Aunt Evelyn was sitting, waiting for me. The house shook, not a gentle tremor, but a violent, violent shake, as if a giant hand had grabbed the roof and was shaking it like a rattle. I fell to the floor, gripping the banister to keep from being thrown off. Paintings fell off the walls, glass shattered everywhere. On the ceiling, cracks began to spread like spider webs. And from those cracks, blood began to pour. Not drops anymore, but streams. Blood rained down on me, soaking my shoulders, soaking my face. I could taste the salt of it on my lips. Real blood. Fresh blood. When the shaking stopped, I looked up. Sarah was gone, vanished as if she had never existed, leaving only a damp mark on the wood floor, the imprint of 2 small bare feet in the dust and blood. But the basement door The door I had been running from was now right in front of me at the end of the first floor hallway. It was no longer open, just a crack. It was wide open, like a mouth waiting to swallow me whole. I don't know how I got down the stairs. Maybe I fell. Maybe I was pulled. Maybe I walked down without even knowing it. All I knew was that I was now standing before the basement door. And the air coming from inside was no longer cold. It was hot. Hot and damp, like the breath of a living body. Like the breath of something living beneath this house. Something that had been waiting. Something that was hungry. I stepped inside. The staircase down to the basement was much longer than it should have been. 10 steps, 20 steps, 30 steps. The basement should have been no more than 10 steps below ground. But I had gone down 30, and still there was no end. Then I heard the door above me close. I turned around. The door was shut tight, and on the door, a small handprint pressed from the outside. Sarah's hand. 5 fingers pressed against the glass. Then the hand slowly slid down, leaving 5 wet streaks on the fogged-up glass, as if someone had been dragged away. There was no way back, only down. When I finally reached the bottom step, the world changed. The basement was not a dark, cramped room. It was a vast hall, endless, with stone pillars rising so high they disappeared into the darkness above, like an ancient temple buried for thousands of years. On the floor were graves, hundreds of them, thousands maybe, small graves, each no bigger than a child's body, arranged in concentric circles like a giant labyrinth. Each grave had a small stone marker. Each stone marker had a number carved into it, the same number over and over again. 1147. 1147. 1147. I looked at my wristwatch. 1147. Looked away, counted to 10, looked back, still 1147. I pulled out my phone. 1147. The clock on the wall of this vast hall. 1147. Time had stopped the moment I stepped into Fairview Manor. Or maybe I had stopped a long time ago, and I just didn't know it. At the center of the circle of graves, an old armchair sat with its back facing me. Over the back of the chair, a withered hand gripped the fabric. Long fingernails curved downward, like bird talons, digging deep into the upholstery, as if they had been there for 100 years. The chair slowly turned, creak, and I saw Aunt Evelyn. But this was not the Aunt Evelyn of those summer days, not the woman who had held me in her arms and sung me lullabies, not even the burned body I had seen on the stretcher 20 years ago. This was something else entirely. A skeleton wrapped in a thin layer of gray, ash-colored skin, pulled tight over every bone like a dress that was far too small. I could see every tendon, every dried black vein running beneath that fragile skin. Her eyes had been sewn shut with black thread, thick stitches, crude, like the stitches on a burlap sack, pulling her eyelids so tight that the skin around her eye sockets wrinkled like a wilted flower. Each stitch was knotted, each knot crusted with 20 years of dust. Her mouth hung slightly open, revealing black, rotten teeth, some broken, some missing entirely. And she was smiling. I knew, even though her lips did not move, because the wrinkles around her mouth pulled upward, forming a smile I would never forget. "You came back," she said. But her voice did not come from her mouth. It came from her belly, a deep, hollow sound, vibrating inside her empty rib cage like a drum beaten from beneath the earth. Auntie knew you would, sooner or later, because you belong here, Jason. You have belonged here since the night you watched me burn, since the night you read those words in the diary. Do you remember what they said, Jason? I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why she had done this, why she had called me back, why I could never escape. But my throat was closed by an invisible hand. All I could manage was a whisper. Weak, faint, like wind through a cracked window. Why? Aunt Evelyn smiled. A smile without eyes, without moving lips. But I could feel it in the air. Her withered hand rose, her long talons hooking into the empty air, as if pulling on an invisible string. Because I chose you, Jason. Not because I hated you, because I loved you the most. I saw the fear in your eyes when you were small. The fear of death, the fear of loneliness, the fear of being forgotten. I didn't want you to live a long life of fear, worrying about things that cannot be avoided. Here, there is no time. Here, there is no death. Here, you will be part of this house forever. Like me, like Sarah, like all the others who came before you. She waved her hand toward the graves around us, and as she waved, the stone markers began to tremble. Not all at once, but one by one, like a wave spreading from the center outward. The earth on each grave began to break apart, and from inside each grave, hands reached up, hundreds of them, thousands, withered hands, skin and bone, long fingernails, waving at me, waving like a crowd, welcoming me home. Do you see? Aunt Evelyn said, and for the first time, her voice sounded almost warm. We are all family here. No one is ever alone. Now, it's your turn. She stood up from the chair. Her bones crackled and creaked as she moved, every joint popping, every vertebrae grinding, like dry branches breaking underfoot. She took one step toward me, then another. When she was close enough to touch, she raised her hand and placed it on my cheek. The cold from her hand pierced through my skin instantly. Not a cold from outside, but a cold from within, spreading into my marrow, into my veins, into every muscle and fiber. And in that touch, I felt something leaving my body, my warmth, my life, being pulled out through the palm of her cold hand. I looked down at my own hands. My skin was turning gray. Gray spots spread from my fingertips to my knuckles, from my knuckles to my wrists, from my wrists to my forearms, like a wave of time washing over me. I looked across the hall to the large mirror on the far wall, the same mirror I had seen upstairs, the one that had shown the room without me. In that mirror now, I saw my own face, but my face was aging, fast, wrinkles deepening, eyes sinking, lips darkening, hair turning white, then falling out. Then my face was no longer mine. It became another face, an old face, a stranger's face, scarred and burned. It was Aunt Evelyn's face. Don't be afraid, she whispered in my ear. Her breath was hot and rotten, the smell of a body that had decayed long ago but was still breathing. It's just a dream, Jason. And when you wake up, you will find yourself in a place where there is nothing left to fear. No time, no death, no loneliness. She pulled me toward the chair. I couldn't resist. My body was too weak now, too old, too tired after 20 years of running. I sat down in the chair. The moment my body touched the fabric, I felt hundreds of hands lifting me, holding me, keeping me there. The chair was no longer a chair. It was breathing with me. It was alive. "Now," Aunt Evelyn said, standing before me, her sown eyes somehow still looking into mine. "Open the diary and write the name of the next one." I shook my head, or I thought I did. My body no longer responded quickly. Every movement felt like it was happening underwater. "You have to," Aunt Evelyn said, and for the first time, beneath her hollow voice, I heard something like pleading. "If no one takes your place, the house will not rest. And if the house does not rest, Jason, you will never rest." End quote. Never. The black leather diary was on my lap. I didn't remember it being there. The yellowed pages flipped open on their own, stopping at the final empty page. A black pencil lay beside it. The same black pencil that had been used to darken the eyes in the painting. The same black pencil that had written the warning that brought me back here. My hand picked up the pencil. I didn't want to, but my hand moved on its own. It wrote a name. I couldn't see the name because tears were flowing down my face. Black tears, like the tears from the painting, like Sarah's tears. But I knew the name was not my name because I was already here. I already belonged to this place. "Good," Aunt Evelyn said, and now her voice was truly warm, like the old days, like those summer days when she was still alive. "Now, sleep, Jason. When you wake up, there will be nothing left to fear." I closed my eyes. Darkness swallowed me. Not the darkness of night, but a warm darkness, a gentle darkness, like an embrace. From far above, through layers of earth, through the foundation of the house, through the wooden floors of the ground level, I heard a familiar sound, a rocking chair. Note, creak, creak, creak. Then I thought, if I died 20 years ago, if I am just a spirit trapped in this house, if I am sitting in that armchair in the dark basement, then who is telling you this story? Are you sure you are just listening to a ghost story? Or did you walk through the door of Fairview Manor without even knowing it? Look at the wall in front of you. Is there a painting hanging there? Are there eyes staring at you from inside that painting? And if there are, turn around right now. Do you see me standing behind you? Or have I been here beside you since the very first words of this story? The house is still hungry, my friend, and it just found a new soul.